Guys, so I'm going to screen record your notes from the last couple of days. This will be the only time that I do this for you, unless I can figure out a way to do it. So this is notes for Monday and Tuesday's class. So we're just going to go through really quickly, and I'm going to tell you what to write down. All right. So you've got totem poles. Totem poles, Native Americans would build totem poles from scratch from poles or pillars. They included symbols and faces, often describing the status of the family. Totem poles were typically made from red cedar and were mostly built by Native Americans living in the Pacific Northwest regions. So what you need to know is that they were mostly built by Northwest tribes, Pacific Northwest tribes. So make sure you write that down, okay? They were mostly built by Pacific Northwest tribes. They were made from red cedar. Okay. And they included symbols and faces describing the family. Symbols and faces describing the family. Okay. Got it? All right, so the next one is buffalo etiquette. Yes, etiquette spelled wrong. It's spelled like they spell it in England. I don't know. We're just going to go with it. All right, especially with the Plains tribes, Native Americans hunting buffalo would use 3 methods: the inbound, the buffalo jump, and the horse-mounted hunt. Buffalo was considered the real food of the land. When a Native American had his first buffalo killed, it was customary for the hunter to be offered the tongue to eat. It was expected that the hunter share it with friends. Okay? So, Plains tribes, that's who hunted it, Plains tribes. Let me zoom a little bit. Sorry about that. Plains tribes, okay? There were 3 methods, so you need to write down the 3 methods: the impound, the buffalo jump, and the horse-mounted hunt, okay? Now, remember, the horse-mounted hunt did not happen until after the Europeans came over, because horses were not domesticated or even existed in North America at the time. They were from Europe, okay? So you've got the impound, the buffalo jump, and the horse-mounted hunt, okay? Buffaloes were considered the real food. It was the real food. One buffalo could feed dozens of people. One buffalo, if they cured it correctly, dried out the meat, could last a family the whole entire winter because they're huge. They're humongous. Okay? And crazy fact, you need to write this down. First kill, the person would eat the tongue. The first kill, whoever killed it, that's who ate the tongue. Tongue was a delicacy. Okay, certain parts of the animal were used, maybe in sacrifices, or certain parts of it went to certain people. The heart, the liver, the tongue. Okay, so make sure you got that. The tongue went to the person, they killed it. All right, so next, porcupine quills. Okay, the quills of porcupines are very useful for Native Americans. They would use them for hairbrushes and other grooming. They would also master a practice that is still used today, quill work. Quill work is a form of art where porcupine quills are woven in different forms, including loom and embroidery. The quills would be reshaped and dyed using natural plant-based dyes and used for multiple purposes, such as embellishing and clothing. So make sure you know they were used in brushes. Okay. And they were used in clothing. Okay. So to embellish clothing, they were used in brushes and then to embellish clothing. Okay? Okay, so after porcupine quills, you've got civilizations. So many tribes seem to be so different from those of Europeans. However, a few tribes impressed them because of their planned farms and villages, showing a civilized social system. These tribes were Cherokee, Choctaw, Seminole, Creek, and Chickasaw. So what you need to know is that the Europeans were impressed because of the farms and villages that were set up. And also you need to know the names of the 5 tribes that impressed them. Right here, the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, Seminole, and Creek, and Chickasaw. Right? So after that, you have the Iroquois Confederacy and the Bald Eagle. The Iroquois were a powerful part of the Native American Confederacy in the Northwest. The totemite, so that's the totem pole of all Iroquois, was the bald eagle. It represented peace and protection. Oddly enough, this influence may be what drove the decision to put the bald eagle on the U.S. shield.
Oh, sorry. I was just bringing this in there.
Sorry about that, guys. So what you need to know about this one is that the Iroquois was a confederacy. Confederacy just means a group of people or tribes or states that work together, and that the bald eagle represented peace and protection. Now, talking about the 5 tribes of the Iroquois is just kind of like an umbrella, and it had tribes like kind of underneath it. Confederacy, remember, means joining together a group of people. So it says, why can't we just get along? That's what I'm not going to butcher that name, also known as the Iroquois, did when prior enemies came together. The 5 original tribes in the 1600s, these are what you need to know. The Seneca, the Cayuga, the Onondaga, Oneida, and Mohawk decided to create the Iroquois Confederacy to establish a strong and powerful peace within their land. So you need to know these 5 tribes. Okay, make sure you know the 5 tribes. Diverse languages. Although many of the original Native American languages are extinct today, almost 300 Native American languages vary across the U.S. It is too difficult to pinpoint where each language came from. Instead, researchers believe the languages come from 3 regions of migration. The Eskimo Aleut, the Nadine, and the Amerinda are the 3 distinct groupings, but many experts reject this idea. So make sure you know that there are 300 Native American languages, and that we really don't know where they came from. So some researchers think that they came from the 3 regions, others disagree. So we really don't know where they came from. Okay. So some U.S. states are named after Native Americans. There are 26 states named after Native Americans. Some are named after tribes such as Alabama, the Albumu tribe, meaning clears the thicket. Others are named after Native American language. This is Massachusetts, meaning about the big hill. Okay, so you need to know that there are 26 states named after the American tribes. Okay, Native American religion. The Shamasan is the oldest documented spiritual belief system, dating back 40,000 years. It's practiced in every indigenous culture across the planet. It is an open source practice rooted in the presence, gratitude, and interconnectivity of all things. A shaman refers to a person who makes journeys to realities or worlds in altered state of consciousness. The journeys are intended to heal, get information, or do other things. Make sure you know what a shaman does. Okay, so next we've got Native American culture. This is going to be the graph or the table that you've got, and I'll tell you what you need to put down. Okay, so much of a Native American art, even the art produced for ceremonies, is functional. You definitely need to know that. Okay, art is not used just to hang up on a wall, it is functional. The Apache were famous for their beautiful clothing items made to honor their warriors and religious leaders. So Apache, they were famous for their clothing, while the Navajo were famous for their colorful blankets woven from sheep and goat wool. So you need to know Apache, clothing, Navajo, blankets. The colors and detailed designs used in Native American art show that artists spent extra time creating art and must have loved beauty. Okay. So make sure you know that pottery and basketry is found in nearly all Native American nations, okay? The medium for pottery is clay. Native American artists use clay to make dishes and decorative pieces. The medium for basketry is plant fibers. These fibers are woven together to create the basket. Baskets had many functions. Mothers carried their babies in them, those papooses that you see. Food was gathered and stored in baskets, and some nations used them in burials. One basket might take dozens of hours to create. So you know that pottery and basketry are found in all Native American nations. Okay. Some Native American nations, including the Shawnee of Kentucky, created beads from shells. These beads were used in their regalia, or they were traded to other Native American nations. The beads could be made into jewelry, belts, or sewn onto clothing. Larger shells, known as gorgets, were often worn around men's necks. These shells were often carved in designs that told stories or gave family history. So know that the Shawnee of Kentucky, they were known for their bead work. Okay. The Pacific Northwest Coast Native Americans were famous for their carved wooden masks and their totem poles. Make sure you know that. The masks were brightly colored and worn by dancers in religious ceremonies. The totem poles were carved from whole logs. The totem symbols had special meanings, often told the history of the tribe or the family with the tribe. Next is dance. Okay. Although there were some social, just for entertainment Native American dances, most dances were ceremonial. So please make sure that you know that most dances were for ceremonies. All right. Native Americans often told stories, such as the story of a very successful hunt. So make sure you know that. Drums were the main instrument used during Native American dances. On occasion, flute-like instruments accompanied the drums. Please put this section in the music part. Okay, they intertwine together, but make sure that you know that drums were the main music, and on occasion, flute-like instruments accompanied them. Okay, the rhythm was the most important element. So even though they were similar, each Native American nation had its own dances. Some are listed below. The Shawnee celebrated the corn harvest when the corn was ripe enough to pick in the summer by dancing the green corn dance. The Chickasaw performed the snake dance, honoring the snake for its patient skills as a hunter. During the dance, the dancers form a long line, following the head dancer. The head dancer imitated the movement of the snake closing on the prey. So all you need to really know is that each Native American culture had their own dances. These wasn't dances that were common everywhere. Each culture had their own dance, okay? So the Cherokee performed the stomp dance. This involved a lot of forceful movements and very loud sound. The leader began dancing and singing. Other dancers answered with their voices and movements. Shells, deer hoofs, and turtle shell rattles were fastened to dancers' ankles and wrists, okay? Make sure that you know this part right here. 100 years ago, Native American dancing was almost wiped out. The American government would not allow it. So please make sure that you know that Native American dancing almost went completely extinct. Today, however, dance is an important part of powwows and other social events where Native Americans gather to celebrate their cultural heritage. Please make sure that you watch this video. It's great. And they show you some different dances. They talk to some people that dance, and they tell you how important it is to them. All right, so for music, Native American music was always performed with drums and other percussion instruments such as rattles and shakers. You can add that onto the music part. Drums were played in unison and maintained a steady beat. Most Native American cultures had flutes, whistles, but these were minor instruments played by a single musician. You should already have that written down. Most singing was done as a group during Native American ceremonies. Please make sure you write this down, okay? So Native American singers never harmonized. Everyone did not have to sing on key. So make sure they didn't care that you couldn't sing. They just wanted everybody to sing. Okay. Special songs were sung to celebrate life events such as the birth of a new baby, children becoming adults, marriages, and deaths. Special songs were also sung for safe travels, success in a hunt, or in victory in battle. All Native American ceremonies included singing, drumming, and dancing. Make sure you know this right here. Okay? Native American music and songs were never recreational. There you go. Know this. Okay. They were sacred. Okay. Songs and dances performed at family and tribe gatherings told the history of the people. Native American music has had little influence on American music today. Native American music, when you hear it, you know what it is. Right? So, drama. They did not put on plays, okay? They didn't have plays. What they did have was storytelling. Please know this. Storytelling is very important to their culture. The storyteller usually has a drum to beat. As the story is told, these drum beats serve as illustrations. While telling the story, the storyteller uses facial and vocal expressions, body movements, diction, speaking style, and nonverbal expression. These performance elements help keep the story to come alive. One Native American story entertained their most important purpose. Right here is this is what you need to write down. The most important purpose was to teach children to respect and honor living things. It was important for them to live in harmony with the earth, okay? To honor their parents, to honor their elders, to honor the earth, to honor everyone else that is around them. That's what these stories were telling them to do. In Native American stories, animals are cute or funny. They are equal partners with the people. They too own the land, water, and sky. So it's not like in the Disney movies where, you have Rapunzel and you have Pascal sitting on her shoulder kind of being, her partner in crime, I guess you would say. These animals owned the earth. They were there. They were just as important as the human beings. Okay, make sure you watch this. It's a cute little story. It's really cute. Okay, so the Europeans arrive. So, it's somewhat insulting to discuss Native Americans strictly in the context of colonialism. Native Americans had their own societies, cultures, and customs before the Europeans, even in the existence of the Western Hemisphere. They're also incredibly diverse. Okay, so Native Americans interacted with European colonists as diverse as the Native Americans were themselves. Some moments in history depict great relations and cooperations with settlers. Others, most interactions will be increasingly hostile and eventually lead to the destructive relationship, one that ends with the other being essentially eradicated. So please know that while some relations were good, eventually they would all turn bad. They would all sour. Okay? So this is just a little quote. All right. You already know that their background influences them. Okay. So, Native and New England trade was one of the first bridges between New England colonists and local and Native American populations. Please write that down. For the colonists, it was about building the infrastructure and relationships that they would need to stay and thrive in the New World. For Native Americans, it was often about building potential alliances. After only 5 years, the Plymouth colony was no longer financially dependent on England due to the roots and the local economy it had built alongside the native Massachusetts people. So at first, they really helped each other. Right? So Thanksgiving, please write down the date of Thanksgiving and who celebrated it. So, and what it was. Right? In 1621, the Plymouth colonists and the Wampanoag Indians shared an autumn harvest feast that is acknowledged today as one of the first Thanksgiving celebrations in the colonies. For more than 2 centuries, days of Thanksgiving were celebrated by individual colonies and states. Okay, so please go through the rest of these, hit on the high notes of them. This is why it's important for you guys to come to Google Meets so we can talk through this. I can tell you what to write down. Please study for your quiz tomorrow. The quiz will be open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., maybe more close to 9:30, just in case I don't finish it all tonight. It'll probably be around 15, maybe 20 questions, maybe 25. Shouldn't take you long. You can actually access it through your Canvas app on your phone, which is always awesome. You can just press the link. It'll take you to quizzes. You can take it on your phone and be done with it. Okay? Have a great night. Please study.